Let's talk about creating a space for difficult, complicated, important conversations.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk About. I'm Joanne Clinton, and this is my co-host James Milan. And this is our third episode in a series of aging, getting older, our bodies. And this episode, we're discussing the end game. What what we're going to choose as individuals, and I can speak for myself. How are we planning the end? What do you have in place for the end of your life? It's a touchy topic, but it's one that must be discussed, and it's one that is very important. So, James, what kind of plans do you have for like the
Yeah,
the golden years, the twilight stage, the winter of your life, the fourth quarter, however you want?
sure. Um, I don't. I do want to talk about that,
Mm-hmm.
and we will.
Mm-hmm.
I promise. But I'd actually, if you don't mind, can we back up a little bit
Mm-hmm.
and just let's talk about the experience that we've already had in our lives
Oh yeah.
with watching the end of life. Because
Mm-hmm.
before we talk about our own thing, let's talk about those elders in our families, et cetera,
Mm-hmm.
that we've seen, because these have been very impactful experiences, I know,
Yes.
for both of us.
Yes. Yes.
So I know, for instance, you have been
Um,
present at or near the end of your parents' lives and others in your
Yeah,
family, right?
yes, yes. I was raised by my father's mother, my paternal grandmother. And being raised by that generation, you're introduced to sickness and dying at a younger age. And I remember attending funerals of members of the church that I used to belong to. And I also, I helped when my grandmother passed away, and I went into the custody of her sister, my great aunt. Of course, I was there, and I saw how cancer had ravaged her body, and how she changed to just being a shell of a person, and her passing away, and the heaviness of the grief, in dealing with cleaning up or clearing away that person's existence, all their stuff, cleaning out the house, dealing with the insurance and the burial, and then on top of that, dealing with the grief, and then also family members who may have disagreements, or grudges, and just being a witness on the side to all of that. I learned that I don't I don't want to go through that. And
Mm.
then when I went to the custody of my great aunt, Aunt Joe, who I'm named after, Joe Hall, and she passed away. She didn't have any children, so I took on what do you call it, power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
I was only 26 years old,
Wow.
and
Wow.
I took on power of attorney and making her arrangements through hospice, and of course, not of course, but she also succumbed to cancer. And when she passed away, and she was a military veteran, so making sure she had all her military honors, and she was buried in the Veterans Memorial Cemetery, and I had a lot of pressure on me. A lot of people were criticizing me about what I was doing, and I'm like, I took the time to myself, and I'm like crying, like, this is not supposed to be happening to me. I mean, I'm 26 years old, and at the time I had a 4-year-old child, my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
and it
And you don't want to be having to deal with all that stuff and
yeah.
think about all that. That's
But
for.
no, but nobody else wanted to take on the responsibility. But they criticized me for whatever little thing, any little mistake that I made. But I got through that. I got through that. And then as time passed, as I got older, my father passed away in 2011, and my mom passed away in 2013. Older, more experienced. There were things in place as far as like insurance and burial plots, so things went a little smoother. But there's still that technical part of it was smoother, but the emotional part, the family stuff, started to rear its head, and you have to deal with all of that. And moving forward, me now, as someone in their late 50s, and I'm thinking about what responsibilities am I going to leave behind? And I want to leave as little as possible. I don't want people to, whoever's responsible, to be overwhelmed. You know, I am I have Muslim beliefs, but I'm not a practicing Muslim. But I believe in the one God, and I don't want to leave a headache, heartache, and fuss for others. So my plan is, my end game is, I do have life insurance. Just, you know, bind me in some linen, cremate me, you know, say a prayer. I already have a surah from the Quran picked out that I want someone to read. And if you don't mind, on your way out of town, just throw me in the Mystic River and go on with your life.
I mean, that is really well thought through. And what strikes me in what you were saying is that death, I'm going to take a half step back and just say, the way that we deal with death in our culture, in the American culture, is so different from other cultures, as we both know, I think. And there's so much of it that we're trying to keep at arm's length. And I think about our cemeteries, for instance. Lots and lots of cemeteries around the country are very well groomed, well tended. You know, it almost looks like you're in a park and feels that way because, again, we want these things to look pretty and nice, et cetera. And again, we put not just the remains of loved ones in those places, but also we close the gates, you know, and we don't have to, and we keep them off, you know, to the side, et cetera. It's not integrated into our lives. And that kind of goes with American culture as far as I'm concerned, which is very future-oriented culture. And so therefore, you know, death is not part of that. Death and progress don't really go together. So that, to me, that's like a larger cultural thing. But more specifically to what you were saying, what I thought you spoke to so well, is the idea for me and for all of us that our death, each individual's death, well, it's our own passing from this world to the next or whatever, but it's a lot of people's experience. And you're being very mindful of the experience of the people who are left behind. And I feel like that's really what death in a lot of ways is about, is the people who are left behind, either to clean up, like you were saying, or to handle all of the legal details, or to grieve, or to resolve or not resolve differences. All that kind of thing feels like those are all just as much a part of the death experience. And so you were saying that you have been present or were present at or near the death of a number of important people in your life. I have with really just two super important people in my life, my grandmother and my mother. And in both cases, it felt in that room, especially with my mom, this was only a couple of years ago, it felt in that room like something sacred was happening. I am a spiritual person, I think, but I'm not a religious person. But I would use the word sacred for this thing that I could feel of she was here, and she wasn't very in those last hours and days, a lot of time for people who are dying of, you know, any number of diseases or what we call natural causes. They slowly recede, right? And you know, and if you weren't there, if you were just looking at pictures, they would just look the same before they died and after they died. But which is just like, you know, because my mom was not responding to things. And I don't have words for it, but I could feel that she was here, she was leaving, we around her, and I'm sure you had this experience too. One of the most powerful experiences I think there is around death is when the people who are living, the people who somebody might be holding on for, give them permission. Give the dying person permission. So I'll never forget for myself, telling my mom that it's okay. It's okay. You can go.
Yeah.
And so those moments, I think, are kind of universal human moments. But they leave, again, so much potential messiness behind.
Yeah, and as someone, of my experience that I've had, trying to be considerate, because I said this to you. I said it's the living that grieve. When someone passes, they passes, and they're released from this life. Those of us who are living, we're left with the emotions, the feelings, the responsibilities, and as one who will eventually pass, I want to try to make that as easy for those that are still left to grieve, because it can be a hard thing, and grieving doesn't have a specific beginning, middle, and end. For all of us, it's different. There's, even one of the ways I accepted the passing of my husband is we're having a really bad argument and we're not speaking to each other right now. But eventually we will finish our argument and we will speak again. That's how I had to put it in my head.
Wow.
To accept it, because when I was at the funeral and everything, and he's laying there, and I'm saying in the back of my eyes, just open your eyes one more time, because he had green eyes, but his eyes were like alive. They had a spark to them, and I seen him. They changed colors with his mood, and I said, I just want to see those eyes one more time. I never got that that wish, or you know what I'm saying. And when we went at the cemetery, going through the whole service, and I'm standing there dressed, as his dutiful wife, and just doing the service, and I'm saying to myself, once I leave this cemetery, I'm no longer his wife. And I'm like, and a part of me couldn't, I'm like, no, I don't, in my head I'm having this little conversation. No, I'm going to always be, Ron's wife, no matter what happens. There's something that we had a conversation about when he was living. And, but for me to accept what was happening, I had to tell myself.
You had to tell yourself that you weren't going to be, that it was done, you mean?
No, that we were just having a really bad argument.
Oh, I see that, yeah. So that
and that we'll continue this argument in another place and another time. So I could accept the fact that he was gone. Well,
one thing that that I heard for years and years before I had my own experience with this with my mother, and that I now understand in a way that I didn't before, is your relationship doesn't end.
No.
Your relationship does not end. Even your communication does not end when a person dies. And I can't really, I'm sure you can't, I'm sure people out there in the world who are also nodding, but we can't find a way to express how that works or how it even happens. I just know that my mother sometimes can hear me, and I can sometimes hear her. And it's not just a voice in my head. There's something else.
Well, for me, when my mother passed away, it was strange. It was like, I remember being in the limousine, and my sibling, she said to me, she was like, "Is this really happening?" And I said, "I don't know."
Yeah, there is
and even though it doesn't make sense, but it did make sense, because it didn't feel real. And wow, my mom passed away July 12th. Maybe that's why I've been so depressed the last couple of days.
Oh, wow.
And I think we buried her on the 18th.
Right, we should let people know we are, taping this on July 15th of the year that we're doing it.
Yes,
so.
And I'm like, oh, that's why I've been having such heaviness. I understand. And, went through the whole grieving and whatever, well, part, the beginning of the grieving. And then one morning, it was shortly after Thanksgiving, I woke up, I jumped out of the bed, and I said, oh, let me get myself together. I'm going to go shopping, right? So, I got out of the bed, I got dressed, grabbed my purse, and it crossed my mind, what am I going to get my mom for Christmas?
Yeah.
And I was halfway to downtown crossing when it hit me. Mommy's gone. I was like, oh.
And that's the way these things go, right? I mean,
Yeah,
again, these relationships go on.
For those brief, however many hours it was, in my consciousness, because my mother lived in Rhode Island and I live here in Massachusetts. In those brief few hours of my consciousness, my mother was alive, and I was thinking about what am I going to get her for Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be what you just said. That's what it was for you, but it doesn't have to be, oh, I thought, how could I think that? Or, oh my God, now I have to remember again that she's not here. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be that just like, oh, I was thinking about her as she was here for so many years. And there doesn't have to be an inherent sadness or grief to that.
No.
There can be a just kind of celebration, in a sense, because it's still present, like
yes,
this
like you're
idea.
saying, like the relationship goes on.
Mm-hmm.
The presence, the consciousness that the person is still a part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about our experiences, with the death of others, because again, those deaths, as you put it so well, that the person themselves, I think we all got to assume they're not feeling pain. Whatever else is happening, they're done with that stuff. And the pain that's left is all for the rest of us. And so I think that, again, thinking about the benefit of those you're leaving behind and doing, as you were saying, getting rid of stuff, keeping things nice and simple, making it so that people can honor and celebrate your memory without it being a big hassle for them.
A big burden, yeah.
These are guideposts or guidelines for how to do death right. It seems like to me.
Or make an attempt to try.
Or try.
Yeah.
Right. Try.
There's no specific way to do it right, and I would say again to I live a very simple life, so what I had to give my children is my good looks. So that's already said. But I would tell anyone that has things like house, money, don't wait until you can't speak or talk, or legally you're considered incompetent, and now everybody else around you is fussing and fighting over. Straighten all that stuff out. As it says, when you have sound mind, maybe shaky body, but of sound mind, and get so that
you're in your 50s, right? Think about these things now.
Yeah,
because they're 25, they're 30, they're 40 years away, whatever it is. But think about them and do something now.
Because who says I'm going to be okay in my 70s and 80s?
Right. But I know the feeling. I'm saying nobody wants to deal with that now. I don't want to deal with it. I have to make myself do those things. Get the wills updated, and figure out, who my healthcare proxy is going to be, and figure out under what circumstances I don't want to be resuscitated.
Yes.
These kinds of things are like, now is the time.
Yes.
Not for our friends, the interns here behind the cameras and stuff like that. They get to wait for a little bit.
12 years old, so they don't have to worry about that.
But really, for people one of the lessons, whatever, that I've learned that I feel like everybody should, really is deal with this stuff before you want to.
Yeah, yes.
Because you just don't know anyway. And you won't suffer if you don't deal with it, but other people will.
I would prefer not to leave that much of a headache behind. But you speaking of me being 50 something, but I've already experienced minor heart failure.
Mm-hmm.
I already use a CPAP every night because I have sleep apnea. The looming idea that I may not wake up in the morning is not far-fetched.
Right, it's not just a concept, it's not just a thought.
It's not far-fetched.
Mm-hmm.
And with each passing year, that becomes more and more of a looming threat. And like we're saying, I do have life insurance. I am starting to discuss with my primary care what kind of things I want in place for heroics, the resuscitation and whatnot. I do know one thing, regardless of whatever happens medically, I'm not doing chemo or radiation. I'm not doing it.
Is that right? You know that.
I just recently got into a relationship, dating over 50, and I let my partner know in the beginning. I said, this might be kind of too early to mention this, but I want to tell you this because if you're going to deal with me, you're going to have to also deal with my wishes. And if it's not something you want to deal with, you may not want to deal with me. And I'm not doing chemo or radiation.
Mm-hmm. Again, that's another, this, as we said at the outset, this is the third of a series where we're looking at this process of aging and what's happening to our bodies and stuff like that. And I think that that's another great point you just made, which is, it's for another time, let's talk about this idea of dating when you're, when you're of mature age.
That's going to be a whole series.
But I do think that that's really an important point, that you have to realize that even when you're getting into a relationship, what would feel way too early to talk about these things, if you were meeting somebody in your 20s or 30s or whatever, it's not, right? You
Not
really
at this
do
end of it.
need to like try and straighten those things out as quickly as you can in a new relationship in your 50s or 60s or 70s or whatever. And that's a weird, right? It's just like this, again, it's another way in which we're reminded that actually we don't really want to think about this very much, and we don't want to taint these fun parts of our early, of the early parts of a relationship that are so exciting about getting to know each other and all that stuff.
But
and you're bringing this kind of thing in. It's like,
but the reality is, we only have a few minutes left. The reality is, when you're over 40 and over 50, your risk of developing life-threatening diseases is much higher. And how are you going to, approach them and address them? For instance, if you have a significant other and you're unconscious and the professionals say, well, what did she want? You have to give an answer. And you don't
want them guessing.
Yes.
If possible, you want them knowing.
To knowing. And so if you're 55, 60 and you just started seeing each other, I'll wait till after we've been together for a while, then we'll discuss it. No, you need to talk about that now.
Well, I'll just say, and I agree our time is getting short, but that it's interesting because you said that, and it's true, of course, that once you get into your 40s, your 50s, the imminence of life-threatening potential issues, it grows, right? That said, we're also, our financial planners and others are saying, you got to plan to be around into your 80s and 90s these days as you're doing your financial planning, et cetera. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about when you think you're just going to be ready to say, see you later, world? I don't
know. I thought you were going to ask me when I think I'd be able to stop working, and I was just going to be, I'll be, running for the bus one day when I finally...
When you finally keel over, because you'll still be at it. Yeah. Well, again, that's another... We have so many potential topics to talk about, but the lack of a social safety net for a lot of people
That's where your faith comes in. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Because the world that we live in, it doesn't seem to matter if you think you have enough money or if you don't have any money. The society and the political atmosphere that you live in, there's all these other looming threats that can make it seem as though I thought I was prepared, but maybe I'm not.
And I imagine you don't have a number, I'd like to get to 85, I'd like to get to this, I'd like to get to that.
80.
For you, you do. So
That's like,
and then
like,
after that, you figure everything is gravy, or
listen. If I want to be like I told you about the lady I know, Miss Sylvia. Some people, their aspirations is to travel around the world, or to get their PhD, or I just want to see my 80th birthday. And if I wake up a day after my 80th birthday, I will be tickled pink.
Well, that's great. For me, it has a lot more to do. And I'm not saying that this isn't also the case for you, of course, but for me, rather than a number like 80 or something like that, it just really has a lot more to do with what they call these days health span, right? Not lifespan, but health span. Because, people often speculate. I used to do it when I was, again, the age of our young interns here. In my 20s, I used to kind of engage in this back and forth with friends sometimes. Would you rather lose your physical abilities or your mental abilities when you get, to be really old or something like that? Which would you rather? And I used to think, I don't want any of that, but I realize now, as I get closer, it would be super hard. I've lived a very physical life. It would be super hard for me to not be able to use my body the way that I want to. But it's my mind. If my mind goes, I'm not interested in hanging around. And I know that much, and I've communicated that much.
Well, a little joke, but a little humor, but truth in it. Somebody once said, well, when you get old and get senile, you won't know it.
True enough. True enough, but that's why I've told others, is that I don't feel like, if they're wondering whether I feel like life is worth it or not, and I'm either not able to communicate that, or I won't remember whatever I said the next day or something, that's what I'm talking about.
I do that now. I remember what I said.
Fair.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like,
fair enough.
I did what? Let me check the calendar.
All right, well.
Well, this is going to continue.
Yes, it will. It will.
The end game is a long game.
It is. But thanks for chatting today about it.
Thanks.
Really
You
appreciate
too.
it.
Yes.
Yeah. So she is Joanne Clinton. I am James Milan. We do this show, Let's Talk About, in order to address for ourselves and for the viewers out there things that people may just not talk about enough. And we hope that you find that this time has been worthwhile on your end. We certainly feel that way on ours.
Yes. Yes, it's worthwhile.
And we appreciate your time and attention. We will see you next time.
ACMi productions are only made possible with your support. Visit patreon.com/ACMi to learn how you can help.